Back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Official test start time 2 minutes. 5 pages, 5 paragraphs each. 5 words per sentence, 5 sentences per paragraph, 5 computer spaces in between, and 5 visions. You can use a hyperscientific, you can use any artificial intelligence, you can use any technology, but you must show the work and share it with the class. If you do not show the work and share it with the class, I'm going to assume all you did was use technology and you will get 0 credit. Let's get started because we're going to close out the week amazing. So let's do the damn digital.
Local tax
Go
experts
Bloomberg, go channel, go
Now
videos,
you can meet with a
put
TurboTax
on your
expert.
closed captioning, and go
Nadia,
China
I'm in
show.
Shanghai, Shenzhen, and here at Hong Kong, you're watching the China Show. I'm Yvonne Net with Annabelle Jewelers.
We're counting down to the open of markets in Greater China, and our top stories this morning: risk assets in the red as Amazon's AI spending plans and weak U.S. jobs data spook investors. Chinese stocks also set for their biggest weekly drop since November.
HSBC prepares to slash and in some cases scrap bonuses for underperforming bankers. The details of that Bloomberg scoop coming up.
Meanwhile, weekend elections in focus with Japan set for a lower house vote. The latest polls putting Prime Minister Tsunade Takaichi on track for a bigger majority.
And I'm Haslinda. I'm in Bangkok, where voters are also headed for the ballot boxes, facing more of the political instability that's turned Thailand into one of the region's economic megaways.
Feels a lot like Groundhog Day when it comes to this tech sell-off. And once again, we've come full circle, and you're seeing it very much here in Asia with Korea, where you continue to see downside there. We've come off some of the initial 5% drop on the Kospi, but we're still talking about some pretty decent sell-off here to really end the week. And really, that we're tracking the first weekly loss for Korean stocks all year. So certainly that's one thing to watch here is, the spillover effect from this whole Anthropic story. You have the Amazon earnings and that huge capex number. I think is still finding hard reasons to really kind of prevent this sell-off here right now.
Yeah, and I think it also becomes quite all-encompassing because it's not just stocks that are being hit, it's commodities, it's crypto. There's lots of different parts of the market that are really feeling this pain this morning. But yeah, to your point, I mean, Anthropic was the big story. We've got another release on Anthropic, but for the foundation model, again, that's the financial services sector now that's perhaps getting rethought around those traditional models. So it's very, very broad-based. But I think, that Amazon number really stood out in terms of the overall CapEx plans. For
200 billion. I mean, then that follows what Alphabet came out with just a day ago. So certainly for investors, I think they're saying, the message is stop spending when it comes to AI, because you're seeing a very fierce reaction to it here right now. Yeah, continue for another day.
And I think it'll be interesting to track for that rotation trade, because we've been really
6,
talking about, the AI parts of the market were feeling the pain, but we were seeing that rally maybe broadening out and investors preferring areas like value, for instance, and the small to mid caps. But what was interesting overnight in the session, you saw that broader retreat for the S&P 500. So that's very much the Mag 7 story. But actually, on an equal weighted basis, you also saw a drop from an all-time high.
Yeah, and I mean, crypto continues to be doing its own thing, but I think we're watching some key levels, right?
Yep.
Obviously, when it comes to silver, that's also one thing to watch. If we hit 70, I think that certainly is that sort of cutoff. Make or break sort of moment. But crypto markets are continuing to see a massive sell-off here. I mean, you talked about strategy, what's been going on there, and that's just really kind of amplifying the concerns there too.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there's just that sort of gapped digital asset treasury model that's very much under threat, and we saw that in Strategy's latest numbers. But let's just take a look at those market boards then, because as we said, it's really a lot of red this morning that you can see here. So the broader index is off 0.6%. You've still got S&P 500 futures that are in the red this morning as well. Where you are seeing some bigger moves really is still in that commodity space. You can see gold that's tracking down 3% there. Silver, likewise, as Yvonne was mentioning, we've really way off, like a third, in fact, of value has been lost since it touched an all-time high last week. So you're seeing, again, just under that 70 level for silver there already in the session. The Cosby, let's just take a quick check on that, because as Yvonne mentioned, yeah, we maybe have picked up a little bit from the lows of the day, but still where you're seeing a lot of that pain is in the big chip names, SK Hynix, Samsung as well. So it's that broader AI trade, of course, foreign selling, a lot of foreign selling going on there. In fact, yesterday we saw foreign funds offloading $3.4 billion worth of cost, and that's the most ever we've seen on a single day basis. Crypto as well, because of course Bitcoin, as we said, tracking that level here, you were earlier down closer to that 60,000 mark, rather a little bit outside, but really just put it in the context. I mean, Bitcoin's now raised about half of its value since it reached a record high 4 months ago. And then how does it set us up for China this morning for trading? I think what was interesting overnight, actually the Gold Dragon Index end of the day in the green. You can see there 96% the upside.
Welcome to our business
doesn't look
meeting.
like it's going to maybe translate over
So
to
glad
Chinese
to have
equities this
you.
morning.
We'll see. It was interesting when you take a look at HS Tech yesterday, late in the session. We actually saw some last minute sort of buying that led to them reversing some of the losses that actually ended up in the green. So we'll see how that plays out. Southbound side of things, how flows are doing here today. But yes, it is a massive wave though across assets on what's really been going on, given some of this tech worries here as well. And let's talk about what led to it this time might be Amazon. We saw the shares take a canning in late trade after the company announced plans to spend that $200 billion you just mentioned this year on data centers, chips, and other equipment. And that's leaving investors worried that its AI bets may not pay off in the long run. Let's bring in our e-commerce reporter, Spencer Soper. He joins us from Seattle. Of course, he covers all things Amazon. Spencer, certainly the headline was the $200 billion in terms of CapEx. What else stood out to you in these earnings?
Yeah, I mean, that really was the big number. Everything else about the earnings print was pretty good. You know, they had a good fourth quarter, good holiday season. Their Amazon Web Services is growing. You know, their cloud computing division is growing quickly. But everything was overshadowed by this $200 billion capital expenditure number that they disclosed for the year. And it just really got investors questioning, you know, how enthusiastic Amazon is with this spending.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
Where do we go then from here? I mean, how much? I guess it seems like investors maybe have run out of patience a little bit, but what does the roadmap look for this year, and how can Amazon also convince investors this is the right way forward? It could decipher waiting, I guess, for more numbers from AWS.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. This is going to be, you know, play out for months, right? And that's exactly what happened on the call. Analysts were really just trying to look for any kind of signal, begging CEO Andy Jassy, like, hey, you're real confident about this. Help us understand your confidence, and bring us along. And one of them even asked about guardrails. You know, what kind of guardrails do you have to make sure you're not spending too much? And Jassy really didn't have an answer for that. And he basically just said, this is an extraordinary opportunity for us to forever change the size of AWS and Amazon as a whole. And he said we're going to keep spending aggressively to maintain our leading position in cloud computing and artificial intelligence. So it is a bit of a standoff for now. And yeah, I mean the proof will be in the pudding, with Amazon showing some better indications that this bet is paying off over time.
E-commerce is still the bread and butter of the business. So do you think that given we saw good numbers there and they're increasing automation, for instance, making some other changes, they had that strong holiday quarter, can the gains that we see there sort of offset, I guess, that spending, do you think, in 2026?
No, I mean, e-commerce is probably the bread of the business, but not necessarily the butter. You know, the butter is still the cloud computing side. You know, that's where most of the profit comes. You know, so it really all eyes are on cloud computing. We almost joke. You know, it's almost like there's two Amazons, right? There's the Amazon that consumers know that they buy from regularly, order things online, and then there's the Amazon that investors know, and it's really increasingly just focused on cloud computing and the future of artificial intelligence. And as long as the e-commerce business is, you know, operating within certain margins, it's really an afterthought for investors these days.
All right, I love that. Yeah, the bread, not the butter. Okay, that was Spencer Soper there, Bloomberg reporter covering this company very closely. But let's also get on, I think, to the other story that was big overnight, because it was, yes, we have the Amazon numbers and investors were really looking closely at that. But the other thing they were watching really closely was this new release from Anthropic.
Yeah, this is different from what we saw earlier this week, which was the AI tools that can sort through legal documents. This is talking about financial research this time around. So I think it's almost become a proxy, this whole Anthropic story about, what can AI really disrupt and really maybe potentially really roil in terms of industries. And I think there's a lot of questions here on, what that was going to look like for some of these companies.
Yeah, that's right. I think, so this week was about updates to Claude Cowork. That was the legal side. That's the AI agent. And this is about Opus. And that's the foundation model, essentially, Claude Opus, but 4.6 being the latest iteration of that. And yes, to your point, just having those financial capabilities. And then you saw that again. I mean, this week it was really about those software plays getting hit. This is the financial services companies now that are feeling that pressure.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about this and what this means for this part of the world, equities and alike, and bring in Sonja, Senior Investment Specialist at BNP Paribas Asset Management. Sonja, it's great to have you on the program. How should I be looking at this sort of tech sell-off here? Do you think this is all very just AI specific, or does it spark some sort of derating in tech?
We think that in our outlook report to our client at the end of last year, we highlight that the sustainability of the US AI value would be the key risk to watch for this year. So we were to our client, and we won't be surprised that if you look at the current market, we should not forget that the market went up almost double last year and by a third in the first month of this year. So we think the market may be going too fast, too far. And last week, even we observed some kind of like Korean domestic investors, they diversify into the Chinese equity stocks, looking for those kind of diversified AI story. I think China in this kind of context offer a kind of more broader AI story than the US equity market.
Yeah, so the pain, I guess, that we're seeing in the US and Korea today, you think that we have sort of seen China being the counterweight to other markets in the past. Does that theme continue then for the foreseeable?
Yeah, maybe here we may offer some nuance for the AI story. So a lot of, I believe no guys can walk out of this studio without talking about AI. But when we're talking about AI, when we're talking about AI story in US equity market is pursuing AGI through large language model. But China's AI story is slightly different from the US AI story. If you look at the AI is about data, model, and applications. And if we are talking about a large language model, I believe that 99.9% of the data on this planet, they don't speak in English. So which means that China not only looking at pursuing AGI through large language model like DeepSeek, or Alibaba, they are doing the same thing. But we also have the company doing the self-driving car, human robot, and also industrial automation. And coupled with the China's industrial complex and also power infrastructure, that makes the Chinese AI story much broader than the US equity market can offer.
How should I look at? I know that the AI plays are very different in China versus you look at Korea, you look at Taiwan. They're very much in the center of the whole supply chain globally, right? When it comes to AI. How should I still look at markets like Korea and Taiwan? Do you think? I mean, they seem to be the most vulnerable to any sort of U.S. tech sell-off right now, but they should be beneficiaries of also AI capex.
Yes.
But they're also now fallen victim to what's been seeing in this route. How should I look? Is there more pain to come, really? You still think for Korea?
We still think that if you look at AI for Korean and Taiwan markets, there's no alternative in semiconductor. If you're talking about the memory, if you are talking about the advanced fab, there's no alternative in this market. So we are still optimistic about the Korean market and the Taiwan market. But I think currently it's just like a kind of very common de-risking of year-to-date very crowded trade. Even for Korean domestic investors, they may think that the market would be too crowded in the first month of the year.
But is this an attractive entry point, do you think, or what is the point where you actually think now's the time to buy in?
Yeah, so we kind of expect and embrace this risk in the market. So throughout the last month, we gradually increase our cash level in our portfolio. So we look for this opportunity to add to the names that we like in the market.
Even this credit improvement success rate by Credit Karma is stunning.
Oh yeah, it's an elegant way to show you use Credit Karma to learn about the factors affecting your credit and how to get your scores from fair to flare. Download Intuit Credit Karma for free and start successorizing your credit today.
Welcome to Jocelyn, the ultimate style edit firm. Here, we curate the latest trends every season. Hand vet them for quality, and ship them fast and free. Whatever your style, bring it home with Jocelyn.
What about in terms of, broadening out of the rally? I mean, we're seeing that in the U.S. a little bit. You're seeing that in China as well. This pivot from growth to value.
Yeah.
Are you believing in this value sort of trade right now? How sustainable do you think it could be?
I think the sector rotation normally like hard to predict and late to chase and burnt when you chase it.
Very quick rotation, in China.
So we would like to stick with those kind of like growth and reasonable price names, like even in the semis in Korea and Taiwan. We think those companies, their order visibility is very high, so we would like to stay with them.
Going back to China, what's your outlook then for this year? Because we've been talking about Hang Seng Tech Gauge, for instance, being very close to a 20% drawdown. Do you see Hong Kong still continuing to feel that pain? But yesterday we also had those southbound flows in really late trade and certainly lifted sentiment into the close.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if you look at the China equity stock, we think the window for China equities is already open because we have seen clearly structured trends happening in this market. And regarding the Consumer Tech Index, if you look at the information technology sector within the MSCI, it's almost flat last month. But within our China equity portfolio, we went up by 8%. We think this stock pickers market instead of board market rally story.
Okay. Anything else? I mean, this is a pretty difficult trading environment. I think we're not used to seeing moves like this, right? When Korea can be up and down like 5%. Where else are you seeing opportunities now beyond just the longer term AI plays as you mentioned here? I mean, I take a look at something like precious metals.
Yeah.
How does that translate in terms of equities, you think?
Yeah, for precious metals, we think that it's a very crowded trade year to date, and even like not only gold, silver, copper. So we think that kind of rally, some part of the rally is supported by the fundamental because of the capex of those kind of material companies. But some of the rallies purely like hype. People just like chasing the rally. So for us, we would like to stay with companies with visible earnings in the future instead of chasing those hypes.
Okay. Song, thanks very much for joining us. That was Songja, the Senior Investment Specialist, Asia ex-Japan and Emerging Market Equities at BNP Paribas Asset Management. And still ahead on the China show, we're going to be hearing exclusively from the CFO of Chinese pork producer Yuan Foods. That says its stock debuts on the Hong Kong Exchange after a $1.4 billion IPO. That's coming up at 9:30 a.m. if you're watching in Hong Kong this morning.
Yeah, and then we're seeing live pictures right now from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange where, Yuan is set to take the stage there to, of course, bang the gong. And certainly that's going to be the one thing to watch here. I think there's a few of them today, so I think there's a few listings that we'll tell you about here coming up. This is the China Show. All right, here's your agenda today. I continue to track what's been going on, which of course is this tech sell-off. And HS Tech, we are still, watching that whole bear market sort of territory there. And certainly we're heading off to one of the biggest weekly losses for the MSCI China, for HS Tech for this year. So certainly that's one thing to watch here today. Southbound flows, whether we do see that sort of support from the southbound flows here today is one key question. The fix, obviously, as well, just given the moves that we're seeing across FX. There's a CGB sale, and we're still tracking metals and crypto today.
Yeah, really busy day. And of course, Bloomberg as well, continuing to track these developments around Panama. And the latest on that is that we've learned that China's asking state firms to halt talks over new projects in the country. That's after a Panamanian court cancelled CK Hutchinson's contract to operate 2 ports along its strategic canal. Let's bring in our China correspondent, Min Min Lo. So, yeah, I guess it's a developing story, but what's the latest on this front?
Yeah, so the Chinese authorities, this is according to what sources are telling us, the Chinese authorities are now, number one, to your point, asking state-owned companies to hold any talks of new projects in Panama. That's one. But the other thing is that the Chinese customs is now going to step up inspections of Panamanian imports, including things like banana, coffee, and you can imagine this is possibly going to be a slippery slope, right? Possibly leading to investigations that could end up in tariffs. And the third thing is that they are asking asking shipping companies to reroute their goods, their cargoes to other ports if it doesn't cost too much money. So a series of actions that they are taking after the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office had posted a notice on WeChat warning of the heavy prices that Panama has to pay if it doesn't reverse its course. So what did Panama do? It dug in its heels because the Panama president gave a press conference and basically said that the Panama government is going to respect the Supreme Court ruling and saying that unlike China, the executive branch of the government is not going to interfere with the judiciary, and that a country run by the Chinese Communist Party is going to be very different from the independent institutions of Panama. That's what he said. And he also denied that the government has been harassing and threatening C.K. Hutchison over the past year. So things are certainly heating up, and is handing that win to President Trump.
Yeah, and what is this impact going to have on Panama?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult to calculate the exact impact because it's not clear now when it comes to halting those projects whether it applies to ongoing projects, because there are currently still a bunch of different projects, at least 3 different state-owned companies involved in infrastructure projects, including a 4th bridge over the canal, a segment of the metro station line, as well as a cruise terminal as well. Panama has already ended its Belt and Road Initiative sort of collaboration with China, so that indicates that it was already reluctant to continue these collaborations. And bear in mind as well, its largest trading and investment partner is the US and not China, so the impact there might be a little bit limited, but in terms of the potential investment that could be derailed, that still could be in billions of dollars. When it comes to the exports of agricultural goods, that's just a sliver of Panama's total exports, but there's no saying that China might expand the list of goods that it might want to investigate further down the line. So yes, we'll see how things pan out further down the road. And by the way, C.K. Hutchison is also starting this international arbitration process to sue for damages, and the Panama president said they are going to defend themselves in the arbitration process.
All right, thank you, Min Lo there. Our the latest when it comes to this deal. We're checking when it comes to the pre-market in Hong Kong, and this is what it's looking like right now. We're down 2%, so continuing on this sell-off on Friday. Although when you take a look at what's been going on with silver prices or Bitcoin, I mean, those have actually come off some of the initial moves to the downside. So things are actually looking better on some of these asset classes. You take a look at that, but we'll see how the China Open fares here right now. So we're down about 2% for Hang Seng. Futures are still very much in the red here this morning, and dollar China at 693 levels. That fix was pretty much in line here this morning. This is
Let's start over, right? All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we're gonna have a quick moment of reflection, right? As you can see, I started to my notes, got that out of the way. After you get rest, your brain functions at its optimal. So in the morning, I handle all of my business, set and organize all of my goals, and I go from there. What is the book for our book club? As you can see, Rembrandt's Enterprise, the studio in the market. Svetlana Alpers. Hey, let's dive right into it. I don't want to waste time. It's a very good book, very good read. I recommend it. For anybody in arts, anybody in entertainment, anybody in business, in general in life is a good book as well. But because I'm in the art space, it's very, very important. Let's see if we can start at the very, very beginning here. Of course, the book is filled with beautiful illustrations and pictures. Just look at classical paintings and drawings like that. This one looks like a Picasso. I actually have a friend that owns that Picasso. I've seen that in real life. in this person's home for many, many years. Beautiful artist. One day, God willing, and God first. So let's start with the introduction. Why not, right? Give me 1 second. My coffee is excellent. I did only 3 creamers today, 3 creamers, and I did 4 sugars. Every day I changed it a little bit, but towards the end of the week especially. So Monday is regular, Tuesday is regular. By Wednesday I start cutting it down. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday I try to lower the dairy and lower the sugar content. I'm diabetic, so kind of watching the sugar intake. So let's start with the introduction. You guys ready? Let's go. Rembrandt is in the news again. It used to be the discovery of a new painting by the master, or the purchase of an old one at a record-breaking price. But today, it is in the discovery that many attributions of pictures to him are false. The Sunday Times of London announces that the Queen's paintings are fake. Some of the most famous and best-loved works by Rembrandt, among them the Polish writer and David and Saul in the Hague, are not. Leading experts have concluded, by his hand, figures 4.3I-4.38. They were probably painted by assistants who worked in his studio. It was the case of the so-called man with the golden helmet, PLI2, in Berlin, that brought the entire issue to the attention of the public in 1985. 40 years ago, in his basic book on Rembrandt, Jacob Rosenberg described the picture at some length and in glowing terms. The man with the golden helmet in the Kaiser Friedrich Museum rightly deserves its fame. A few words cannot do justice to this masterpiece, which modern critics have especially praised for the boldness of Rembrandt's technique in the powerful impasto of the helmets. It would be difficult to find anywhere a more emphatic glorification of the beauty of gold and of old craftsmanship in this precious metal. But Rembrandt's aim was not a still life effect for its own sake. This phenomenon of pictorial beauty is placed in a mysterious and even tragic setting. The spiritual content dominates in spite of the brilliance of the upper part of the composition. This contrast between the splendor of the helmet and the subdued tonality of the face makes one deeply conscious of both the tangible and the intangible forces in Rembrandt's world, and of their inseparable inner relationship. As in all his great works, one feels here a fusion of the real with the visionary, and this painting, through its inner glow and deep harmonies, comes closer to the effect of music than to that of the plastic arts. So, just that in itself says everything that I wanted to say about how I feel about art and of course my music, because my music is this right here. On the basis of a detailed study of the way it was painted, and in particular on the evidence of the substructure, that is, what is described as the underlying drawing, which was revealed by autoradiography. I apologize. It has been concluded that the painting is by a Rembrandt student, assistant, or follower whose name is unknown. In the face of its disattribution, a specialist at the Berlin Museum assured the press that the painting was neither a copy nor a fake. but an independent,
Interested in
original
GLP-1s for
in
weight
its
loss,
own
but
right.
worried about high costs and hidden markups? GoodRx.
With its own independent work. But it is hard to value a painting, or let me see. Let's bring that to the beginning. Okay. On the basis of a detailed study of the way it was painted, and in particular on the evidence of the substructure, that is, what is described as the underlying drawing, which was revealed by radiography. It has been concluded that the painting is by a Rembrandt student, assistant, or follower whose name is unknown. In the fates of his disattribution, a specialist at the Berlin Museum assured the press that the painting was neither a copy nor a fake, but an independent, original in its own right, with its own independent work. But it is hard to value a painting which is not the product of a particular artist's hands. This is an authentic work by X, has been central to the marketing, to the study, and even to the definition of pictures. Reattribution is an accepted procedure. But what exactly is this attribution? Just where does this leave us as viewers? Where does this leave Rembrandt? Or, for that matter, where does this leave the value of the work of art? The questions are pressing ones, because to a remarkable degree, Rembrandt has come to be synonymous with value itself. Whether it is a matter of having the taste to choose the right hotel in New York, the fine art of doing business in New York, illustrated with a Rembrandt self-portrait set up the Stand Hope Hotel, or reaching for a compliment to female beauty. Her features are perfect. To disfigure her face is difficult. It's like putting your foot through a Rembrandt. Said of Farrah Fawcett, buying a unique commodity as an investment. If you could buy a Rembrandt in its infancy and then have it now, it would be the same as having this car several years from now, when it will probably sell for 100 million. Said of the 1931 Bugatti Royale, or distinguishing a quality athletic performance. As it was, he had to settle for the best one hitter in recent Oakland A's history, a 1 hour, 58-minute, 93 pitch Rembrandt, set of a perfect game that wasn't. And one could go on. Individual uniqueness, monetary worth, aesthetic aura, the name of Rembrandt summons up different but nevertheless convergent notions of value. And to what precisely does that or the name itself refer? Rembrandt, as it is commonly deplored, tends to lead the works of the man. All of this a recent invention, a prejudice of the 19th century to which we are heir? Or is it appropriate to Rembrandt's own making and marketing of his works that they should offer an example of that relationship between the production and valuing of a person, property, and aesthetic worth that lies so deep in our culture? To argue Rembrandt's responsibility, or in these matters, involves a certain adjustment in our view of the man and his works, exercise of authority in the double sense of the claim to be the maker of his works and the claim to exercise rule takes its place beside his long reputed sympathy for the poor, the weak, and the outcast, whether in the household, the studio, the Bible, or myth. and an interest in the marketplace takes its place beside his interest in man and womankind. One need not defend the legitimacy of the established view to point out that far from being con- contradictory, these tendencies are joined together in an ideology which is part of our culture. Charlie Chaplin is a good, if unexpected, example. Charlie played the little man out to undermine the very system which Chaplin supported by buying into control of his own studio and imposing his will on the acting troupe he hired and directed. Despite the scruples we may feel when IBM adopts Chaplin as its corporate emblem, it is cashing in on those entrepreneurial values that have been sustained by a certain kind of ambitious arts. But what can one make of the disturbing fact that some of the works of the very artists whose paintings have been seen as paradigmatic of individuality are painted by other hands, and to Rembrandt's identifiable laying on of his paint and his fabled responsiveness to each individual sitter, we must add his proclivity towards self-betrayal. Almost single-handed, Rembrandt established the self-portrait as a central mode for painters and as a major type of Western painting. It is now generally acknowledged that the 19th century shaped its myth of the lone genius out of a selective reading of Rembrandt's life and his art. But are there not things about the paintings that accommodate let's take that from the top. But what can one make of the disturbing fact that some of the works of the very artists whose paintings have been seen as a paradigmatic of individuality are painted by other hands, and to Rembrandt's identifiable laying on of his paint and his fabled responsiveness to each individual sitter. We must add his proclivity towards self-portrayal. Almost single-handed, Rembrandt established the self-portrait as a central mode for painters and as a major type of Western painting. It is now generally acknowledged that the 19th century shaped its myth of the lone genius out of a selective reading of Rembrandt's life and his art. But are there not things about the paintings that accommodate them to such a view? Was Jacob Rosenberg, at least insofar as he was making a general point about Rembrandt, totally wrong? Don't his paintings give off an effect of singularity and of individuality, a sense of an almost tangible or material human presence wrought in paint? It seems a cruel paradox that questions of authenticity are raised about the very artists whose art seems to have been devoted to displaying it as a major virtue. A number of suggestions have been made about how to deal with the situation. Let us consider three. The first and the last written in response to the disattribution, the man with the golden helmet. In the 19th century, it was felt that only the genius could paint what was worth looking at. So any painting that seemed Rembrandtesque had to be by him. Now we know that there were lots of artists who painted as well as the master. In contemporary life, we believe in many peoples beside the main mover or movers. It is of much greater historical importance to know whether and for whom Rembrandt painted or inspired the painting of a particular composition at a particular moment in his career than to know whether this or that existing canvas is by the master's own hands. Let me give you an opportunity here to reflect, and I'm going to chime in. I like the fact that he shared his knowledge. Let us continue. The man with the golden helmet is as great as it ever was, not the least bit fake, but to be described in the future as a work by Annan, or perhaps School of Rembrandt, is to be changed forever, and the change somehow diminishes the picture and therefore diminishes us. This continued search for truth can be a painful and punishing process. Sometimes it seems that all of education consists of first learning things and then learning that they are not true. The first writer finds virtue in recognition of the democratic spread of talent. The second argues for transferring authority to the artist's patrons. And the third draws the conclusion that things are seldom what they seem in the human search for truth. But whether opting for equality among artists or patrons, or for the general condition of human loss, they are unanimous in registering a sense of Rembrandt's weakened authority over the production of Rembrandt. And yet there is something a bit unseemly about the haste with which Rembrandt is being cut down to size in the name of emptying out what is referred to as a 19th century notion of genius. It is true that Rembrandt's accomplishment was no different from other artists at the time, or that not he, but his patrons provide the key to his art. What we are faced with is a growing number of paintings like the man with the golden helmet, which, whether they were painted by him or not, would have been inconceivable without Rembrandt. It is not the notion of human genius, but the way it manifests itself that deserves attention. Rembrandt's paintings have long been problematic as far as the question of attribution is concerned. The modern trend has been restrictive. Early in the century, Hofstede the Groot estimated his output at about 1,000 paintings. I have 10,000 plus songs. Successive scholars have cut it down to 700, then to 630, then to 420. And research currently underway by the Rembrandt Research Project in Amsterdam will cut it down still further. It has long been assumed that Rembrandt was an active teacher, but it is just now being recognized that the growing number of works identified as Rembrandt lookalikes were made by apprentices whom he taught or by artists whom he used as assistants and who, as such, painted in his manner. Of course, some others were simply camp followers who took up the manner on their own. It was common practice at the time for an artist to run his studio as a workshop to produce pictures. Rubens did so, as did Bloemer, Honthorus, and many others among the Dutch. Rembrandt's idiosyncrasy was that he also treated the paintings of a picture as a definitively individual enterprise, like I have with my NFTs, my digital assets, right? He demonstrated that there is no necessary contradiction between running a business and claiming individual pictorial authority. And Rembrandt's paradoxical, paradoxical achievement was that he got other artists to pass themselves off as him. He cloned himself. One result is that some of the Rembrandt-esque works, the Polish writer, and David and Saul, for example, are among the most impressive paintings made in Holland at the time. Another result is the anxiety about their attribution. I wonder, being that I've traveled the world, if they're going to attribute certain of my hit records to this record was created in France, this record was created in Italy, right? Okay. Responsibility for the problem of attribution raised in the case of a work like The Man with the Golden Helmet can be laid at Rembrandt's own door rather than insisting on the authenticity of this or that painting or assuming that Rembrandt had less authority or way, no, authority or was less the individual painter than has been assumed. One might inquire as to how he deployed his authority and how he constructed himself to paint. It is not, then, just a matter of coping with the latest news, for it would seem that in the works of this painter, who was an inveterate self-portraitist and was also, we know now, the head of a large and productive workshop, the question of identity, which is after all the problem of attribution put in other terms, was already very much in play. The flurry of questions about attribution has put into the background another common Rembrandt concern, meaning, in its simplest form, the identity of the subject of a painting has been as much a problem as has been the identification of the artist's hands. The titles which many Rembrandt paintings go by are a record of evocative yet puzzled attempts at description. The Man with the Golden Helmet, the Polish writer, the Jewish bride. It has been argued that it is precisely the uncertainty of the subject that makes for much of the richness of these works. The painting's triumphs over questions of identity. It, its implications sink in slowly, like a line of a brilliant verse. I'm trying to tell you, this is my music right here, right? So he treated every single painting like an enterprise. He taught others, meaning he cloned himself to the point where people thought that they were the real deal Rembrandt. Um, Much credit is due to artists who have done this, especially this is 19th century. This is just yesterday, right? Um, I feel like I'm reading a description of my catalog here, and when you look at the titles, even themselves using the titles to describe what they're seeing is controversial because it can mean something completely different. It's like an unlocking key to a different universe. But it's the same thing. A lot of the titles in some of my songs, I had to title a certain way because I had such a high volume. I'm not going to go into details. I'm in public right now. But basically, something like The Jewish Bride, The Polish Rider, The Man with the Golden Helmet, it's like that's just the appetizer, before the full meal comes. And it says, look at this quote. Tell me if this is not beautiful writing for my writing students. Its implications sink in slowly. People don't realize how nice I am today. Did he really say that? Wow. Listen to this beautiful. This is like writing that you can savor as you read it. It's like I'm eating cookies. You know what I mean? Its implications sink in slowly. Its implications sink in slowly, like a line of a brilliant verse. So he painted as music, like he was playing an instrument, like a sound, like a vocal or a specific type of lyric, etc. This is why his paintings are they're moving, they're there, they're still, but they're moving a little bit and just enough for you to notice, and that's it. And that's what makes them special. Also, Rembrandt, Van One, baby, you already know, right? All right. A recent critic wrote of the so-called Polish writer. One is reminded of the terms in which Jacob Rosenberg praised the man with the golden helmet. How do titles and incidentally terms of praise like these come about? All right, we got one more paragraph, okay? Let us take, for example, the painting now in Amsterdam of a richly garbed couple, the man with one hand on the woman's shoulder and the other resting on her breast. Figure II-11 in 1834, and its then owner, John Smith, described it as the birthday salutation of what he took to be a 60-year-old man to a woman whom the next owner, an Amsterdam collector, described as a Jewish bride being ornamented by her father with a necklace. So they completely misunderstood the Jewish bride. But over time, they understood what it was because they never really looked at it from a religious uh, filter or perspective, right? So it turned it from this spicy to this religious like honor, like I'm giving you my wife. I saw yesterday Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio, and there's a scene where he's gonna marry the lawyer's daughter, who was the head nurse when he started practicing medicine. And the way that the father spoke to him was very very amazing. Even though it was a high tension scene, you didn't know what was gonna happen. He's like, you're just a romantic. You're not a lawyer, or airline pilot, or a doctor. You're just a romantic. In 1834, its then owner, John Smith, described it as the birthday salutation of what he took to be a 60-year-old man to a woman whom the next owner, an Amsterdam collector, described as a Jewish bride being ornamented by her father with a necklace. The 19th century seems to have thought it was a double portrait, which it well might be, but they tried to displace a certain embarrassment about the hand on the woman's breast by referring to the man as the woman's father. So, in that sense, we're finishing chapter. No, not chapter. We're in the introduction, page 6, paragraph 2. So let's make a little for my signature there. I like to write in my books, y'all. I'm sorry. All right. So, mission accomplished for today. This is the introduction to the direction we're going to be taking for today. Um, we're going to start the day with a cool prayer, and we'll get our day going. So, before we pack up and we finish this, give you guys a little reflection. Everybody relax. We're doing good. We got the first module done. Many, many, many more to come. 1 second. Again, this book is my future right here. This is my entire life right here. My legacy, everything right there. And I thank God for giving me that. So here we go. Let's get a quick prayer. You guys ready? Right. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for all the blessings in our lives. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for all the blessings in our lives. We worry not about what we don't have because you're in the process of getting it. And in that journey, everything you do is in your name. Amen. Amen. All right. May you have an amazing day today. May you conquer everything in your path. May everything that you touch turn into solid gold bars and silver bars, and beautiful and precious gemstones such as moissanite or laboratory grown diamonds or any laboratory grown gem. Always remember to dream big because dreams come true. It happened to me, and I know for a fact it's going to happen to you. We'll be right back. You guys have the best teacher in the world. We're going to go check on the churches, check on our charities. We'll be back in the office. We got to help the family with this proof of concept brick and mortar location. I have to network. I got to run logistics for the tour. I got to negotiate the Switzerland performance in in Valentine's Day, which has kind of fallen apart. But I have to at least dedicate the rest of today because Monday we're moving forward, and I got to start marketing campaign for all weddings, sweet 16s, quinceañeras. So I'll leave you with that. We'll check the markets. We're gonna go back to Monroe. We're gonna do engineering. Of course, we got automotive designs. We're gonna work on the new generation of the Corvette, and we're going to go back to Tesla battery technology, Palantir, Polestar, Lucid. We'll work on all those systems. So that's what we got for today, and then we'll see what else we can add to the module. Of course, we're going to take the Spanish test first, get that out the way. We'll do our inspirational quote of the day, and we'll be ready to go. But it's a time crunch. My schedule is booked nonstop, so let us motivate. And don't forget the applesauce. See you in a little bit. Dreams come true.